I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, recorded on May 8th, 2014. Theme Thursday is a new series where we dive deep into the CliftonStrengths Finder themes one at a time. Today's theme is Relator. If you have questions, comments, or contributions, we do have a live chat room available for you. It's actually right below the main video window, so if you're watching at coaching.gallup.com, it's right below. If you don't see it there, and for some folks it's blocked, there's some instructions right below it on how to get to that and get around it. So you can find that all at coaching.gallup.com. If you are listening to the recorded version and you have questions, you can send those to us via email. Super simple, coaching@gallup.com. And don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just gallupstrengthscenter.com, all one word, gallupstrengthscenter.com. For all your resources and training needs, we have a lot of information out there, and you can also catch this video in both streaming or downloadable audio for offline listening. If you want to listen to it on your phone on the way into work, you can do that as well. All over at coaching.gallup.com. I mentioned before, if you'd like to live tweet with us during the program, just use hashtag CSFchat. And Curt Liesveld is our host today. Curt works as an advanced learning and development consultant here at Gallup on the riverfront, and I get to see Curt every day, and he's quickly becoming my best friend at work. Curt, how are you?
Good to see you, Jim. Hello, everybody. It's good to have all the strengths enthusiasts on the line again for Theme Thursday. And today we're going to be looking at the Relator theme. And I'm going to give a brief overview of that. And then afterwards, we're going to kind of bring in our kind of theme guest. Today, we're really very fortunate to have on the webcast Brim, Dr. Brian Brim, who is he is a Gallup Senior Practice Consultant. He's been with Gallup in that capacity for 24 plus years. He is also one of Gallup's authors. He's written a book called Strengths-Based Selling. So obviously, Brian has been involved with this strengths movement for longer than I have, and so we're really honored to have his insight into talking about Relator. And I actually wanted to have him on for this particular theme because he's also a very kind of strategic, forward-thinking kind of person. I call those the sexy themes. But I wanted to kind of deal with a theme that's really kind of commonplace. It's pretty frequent in the profile. Relator is, I think it's number 3 on the list of frequency. 28% of people have Relator. So, Brian, welcome to the show, and we look forward to hearing from you a little bit later on.
Thank you, Curt.
Okay, let's dive into Relator, kind of the overview of it. Relators, I think at the core of it is the capability of building close, authentic, and sustainable relationships that foster trust. And I guess I can say this because Relator is one of my signature themes as well. We're kind of slow sometimes, and maybe it depends what other themes you have, but it takes us some time to do that. It's a part of the relationship building domain when we think about the domains of leadership. Some words that I think are often used to kind of explain and illustrate this Relator theme. Words like friend might be an important one. People who have friendships and can make friendships and can make lasting friendships. Confidant. I think trusted advisor is a word that I would kind of give to people who've really learned how to leverage Relator at a very sophisticated level. Family member, colleague, companion, partner, teammate. Someone wanted to talk about teaming. I think Relators can be people who really enjoy being a part of a team, especially when they get to kind of interact and work with other people to get something done. Maybe some adjectives that might kind of illustrate Relator a bit. Informal versus formal. I don't know if Dr. Brim prefers to be called Brian or Doctor, but many times Relators prefer more informal approaches. Personal might be a way. Personal. Mutual. They really like mutual relationships. I want to get to know you, and I want you to get to know me. It's about both knowing and being known. Transparent. Sometimes, especially with their friends, people who are relators can be quite open and transparent. One-on-one, I think, is a key part of being a relator. They are often at their best when they have opportunities for one-on-one interactions with people. It's some of what they do best. Sometimes I think we use the words intimate. They can get close to people, and they may be perceived as caring. And again, I use the word slower. Maybe slower is better than slow. It's a social instinct that takes a bit more time. It's kind of like when a person with a relator goes to a party, they're thinking, boy, there's somebody here I know. I really don't want to spend a lot of time getting to know somebody I might never meet again. They think about, I think, the longer term of relationships. So they can also be a bit selective. I think the basement of relator is that sometimes a person can be close to other people, but that closeness can become closed. Could become kind of cliquish, maybe showing favoritism to the people that they're close to, or it could also be someone that could be initially hard to get to know because they might not have this kind of stuff that Woo has. Woo is really about social initiation and social courage, the beginning of relationships. I think relators are really good at taking relationships to a deeper and a longer level. Let's see, what else? The theme that is most often paired with relator in our data is responsibility. Typically, when a person's got relator, you might often find that they have responsibility pretty high on their profile as well. The themes that are least likely paired with relator, this doesn't mean it's impossible, are woo and command. And so that makes some sense. It'll be interesting to find out if Brian has kind of fits that pattern or if he kind of is unique. I think sometimes it's good to think about these themes within the context of a role. And I've done some kind of writing about thinking about these themes within the context of being a parent. And so I wrote this item here for how a parent might use relator. And so it is schedule regular and one-on-one time with each of your children. Your undivided attention will deepen your relationship. And I've heard of people who've done that. They've had kind of like dates with their kids individually. Maybe you've got 2 or 3 kids and you give them some kind of undivided attention. That's good for them, but it really enables you to do, as a parent, one of the things that you do best is kind of build that deep connection. So I think that's a pretty good introduction to relator here. Brian, what are some things that kind of come to the top of your mind when you think about your relator theme?
You know, Curt, it was interesting listening to you talk because I am not unique. I have responsibility up there in my top 10, and command and woo are not as strong for me. So kind of meet the profile that you laid out there for sure. The one thing I've always said too is that woo is kind of like the courtship and relator's the marriage. So the relator is the going deep part, and so
I like that.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what you said there. Just fits very perfectly with how I interact with people. Some of the things that you said, for example, around lasting, give it the slow or slower is right on. That I take the time to get to know people, and it takes a while. But what happens is when I am given that opportunity, the lasting part is there because you've really established some of those foundations, I think, that are so key to the relationship and to the sustainment of that relationship.
You know, this is a theme that I think many times people perceive as more of a personal theme, and it certainly is personal. It's about personal relationships, and sometimes I've seen people struggle to think about how this can be used in a professional setting. And obviously, you've been very successful professionally, and I'm just wondering if Relator has contributed to that in any way, and if so, how?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's been absolutely critical as far as when I look at the client relationships that I have. You know, I have client relationships that span, you know, years and years and years and years. And they're when you say informal, they are informal. They tend to be, you know, not that I'm not a professional, but there's a long list of folks that over the years that I could call tomorrow, and it would be like I was calling a friend. I have one client that jokingly calls me, you know, her best friend at Gallup. So it is that opportunity, and frankly, you know, they are real relationships. It's about their families. I know about what's important to them. So they're people to me, more so than clients to me. And that's not a forced thing. It just so happens that one of the interesting dynamics I've noticed is that I also have achiever in my top 5. And so that combination of having something to work on, along with having that relator, it gives us the reason to go deeper in that relationship. So
Yeah,
I definitely see the connection.
it's kind of the substitute for the courtship. It's what kind of gets you together.
That's it.
And once there's something to kind of break the ice, that's what I often say. Relators, we have a hard time kind of breaking the ice, kind of taking the first social steps. And I'm not saying this about you. I'm saying this. I'm a bit awkward initially in social settings where I'm not familiar, but having something to work on certainly provides the impetus to getting together. And once you get together, I just had somebody else in one of our groups say the very same thing. They really like working together with people. That's where some of their best relationships have come from.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right on, right on. And what's interesting for me is, as you know, and Jim knows, I work outside of our building, a vast majority of my time. And so it's no longer as part of my mode of operation. I don't have an intact team I necessarily work with within Gallup. So what's fascinating is when people talk to me about, best friend at work, for example, many of those are my clients.
Yeah.
I work more with client teams than I do many intact teams. So it's been a fascinating dynamic to watch. Not to say that I don't like the people here at
Gallup. Well, that's good to hear. You're just not around us very much. It's hard.
That's true.
And I think that's part of what relators need, to tell you the truth. They need kind of face-to-face stuff.
Yeah.
They need that kind of real interaction to some degree to kind of help that relationship develop.
Absolutely. Agreed completely.
How about this? I mean, a lot of times people talk about relator and authenticity and genuineness. Does that resonate with you? And what does that look like? What does it look like for you to be authentic?
That's a really interesting one because you mentioned the one-on-one, and I think that's really, really true. That the one-on-one connect is very important for deepening the relationship for sure. But what I've also been told is that I also give a lot of speeches in front of rooms of several thousand folks, and I've often been told that there's a real level of authenticity about what I say and how I say it. And I think part of that is relator, because many of my stories, the reason the authenticity comes out is because I'm telling stories about real people that I had relationship connections to. Now, I think it helps that I have belief very high in my top of my list, but I think the relator really does allow me to bring very authentic stories to the surface about real situations that I was a part of.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it speaks also to kind of the transparency. I want you to talk a little bit about your background, and if you think that, is there anything in your background, either kind of geographic, your social background, that maybe made you the way you are? Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, very interesting. First and foremost, I'm the youngest of 6 kids, so I don't know if birth order might have something to do with it. But now we were around, we always had a lot of activity around the house and a lot of, connection that way. But I also grew up in a very small town, and by that time, being the youngest, our cluster in the family had become myself and 2 older siblings, and the rest had kind of moved out of the home, and so the home got smaller. My mother tended to be more of a person that was selective about relationships. She was what I would consider more formal than myself in regard to relationships. My dad tended to be more out there with his relationships. He tended to be more at ease. I think I've got a combination of the two because I'm very comfortable in situations where I have a reason for being there, for example, in front of a room, teaching a program or giving a speech. But I also have that very selective side. And so growing up, I was popular and knew a lot of people. I was, active, so that helped. But then I had my clusters, smaller groups, and that tends to be something I've had all my life. And so I think even potentially there's probably part of just the natural wiring, but then there's also a part of the environment that influenced some of that, would be my guess.
You talked about you've always had kind of these smaller groups kind of throughout your life, kind of a core group or a kind of a close network, kind of a inner circle almost of friends and family. What do you think? Why do you think that's important to someone who has Relator?
I think it's interestingly, it's a great question because I'm not high in context. Futuristic's actually number one for me, but I think it's part of the history. I think it's having a history. I think for a relator, in many ways, that history is important. Knowing that we have some shared experiences that we can harken back on. I've got, and here's the other thing. It doesn't mean that I don't acquire new groups. So,
yeah.
I think about in the last dozen years or so that there's been a new cluster of friends that have formed, and yet I still have the cluster from before we moved of friends that I stay connected with. There's that history, and so you form these new histories. There's also just a sense of values that you hold. Most of the friends that I'm close to, are very family-oriented. Strong values about friendship, and they're the kind of people that I know if I called any of them in those clusters and said, I need your help, even if it was jumping on a plane, they'd be there, kind of thing. And so that's kind of the common pattern I would see among those relationships, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that people would probably say the same thing about you. If they called you up or needed something, you'd probably be there as well.
Agreed. Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed about, I have a kind of a similar, I have Relator as well, and I find that the reason I like to have these clusters of people who are kind of my inner core or inner circle is I want at least some place in every place that I inhabit where I can be who I am.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm phony other times, but I am more myself. I feel more at home and more comfortable to say what I think and to be what I want to be. And so there's almost a freedom that you have when you're with those people who know you best and maybe love you most that you don't quite feel in some other place.
Yeah, that's really well said. Really well said.
How about tell me just about your, how this theme has impacted your personal life, how it's maybe added value to it. I know. Tell people a little bit about this group of people you've gone fishing with. We talked about that the other night.
Yeah, it's fantastic actually. We, like I said, youngest of 6 kids, and my brothers and I, my oldest brother is quite a bit older than me. And then the middle brother. So there's 3 boys and 3 girls. And what was interesting is my dad had always said before he passed away, I really want to take you boys fishing together. Well, my brothers and I talked about that because we never got to do it. We did it in fits and starts, but never did the official trip Dad talked about. And so it was interesting as I stumbled upon an opportunity with some good friends that I already had, who just so happened to be 2 brothers and their father. And now it's been 10 years or so, maybe more, that my 2 brothers and myself and those 2 brothers and their father, and a couple other folks that are dear friends now, have had that consistent experience every year, every single year, going together for a week, really bonding, having that opportunity to reconnect. So in my personal life, I think that it's very clear that family is incredibly important. That's a great opportunity for my brothers and I. I live near all 3 of my sisters, and so it's a big, loud family, and so we have a lot of opportunities to connect over the holidays. I'm 5 minutes from my beautiful 88-year-old mother, who I have the opportunity to go over and have dinner with her and visit with her and take care of her, and so that's very fulfilling. It's not a burden. It's something that when I can't, for example, with my mom, when I can't get over there, I feel emptier. I want to be there to help her and support her. I think that's all part of that Relator, part of that belief connection I mentioned earlier, but definitely part of that Relator.
Absolutely. So let's think about How has Relator ever gotten your way? Has it ever kind of hindered you or held you back in any way?
Yeah, I think that there's been times where um, you hold so true to a relationship that you may not make different decisions, even though they potentially are probably a better decision for you to move toward. But because of the loyalty or the commitment that you've made, even if it hasn't been overt, but perhaps you've made it internally that I will work with this person, or I'll support this person. That sometimes you may forego other choices because of the relationship that you felt was so important. What's interesting is that could not be seen the same way from the other side. So if you did make the choice to make a different decision about your career path or whatever it might be, that had you done that, the person that you were being loyal to would have said, that's fantastic, good for you. But because of your own relator and your own loyalty, you may oftentimes sense that same need or that same desire, that same level of connection exists on the other side, but sometimes it doesn't. And so I think it's just being, very open. And I think with experience and age, I've gotten much better at just being really open when I'm wondering about whether or not does this mean that I'm not being true to our connection because I'm siding with this person or I'm making this decision. So I think it's really important.
You know what I liked about what you said earlier about how these kind of clusters of friends that you've developed is the idea that you're still adding clusters.
Yeah.
Your social network. I think sometimes we get the idea that relators just have these kind of puny little social networks. I mean, they might have a pretty deep one, but there's not many of them. And I think you've kind of exploded that myth for me that you can build a broader network as well by continuing to add these clusters of friends and circles.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it may take us more time, but when you do build the new cluster, if you will, the old one's still there. So
Yeah.
I mean, like for example, our folks an hour down the road, they'll come up and it's that same cluster, and some of them are Gallup folks that we still gather together for a meal and maybe once or twice a year. So that cluster is still there, that depth is still there. But at the same time, I'm connecting to new clusters. And what's also interesting is then there's times where I bring them together, overlap them, where you connect those dots between those two groups and say, you've got to meet these folks. They're really great folks, and you'll really love them. And that tends to be because they also value friendship. They value the types of things we've been talking about.
You talked about some of your other themes about belief, kind of the important role that it kind of how it pairs with your relator quite a bit. Are there any other kind of theme dynamics, other themes that really kind of enhance your relator or change your relator? Have you noticed any of those?
Yeah, you bet. Like I said, achiever, definitely, because it kind of gives you the ticket to admission. I think what's fascinating is you'll think this one's interesting, is that I often know in a client who I should get to know, but if I don't believe in their values, if I don't think they see the true value of relationship, even if I know I should get to know them, I can't network just for the sake of networking. So I mean that can be a barrier maybe, or it's just the reality of the fact that I'll serve them great. I'll be a great partner to them, but the fact that they are wired the way they're wired and I'm wired the way this is the selective piece, that just may be someone that I just feel like, I don't see myself ever really connecting with them at that depth that I do with some of the other folks. So positionally, I may know that person's going to advance the work we're doing, but from a standpoint of relator, I just may simply be able to say, not be able to advance the relationship beyond just providing good service, etc.
Yeah, I mentioned in the kind of the beginning that one of the phrases I used to describe what maybe might illustrate relator would be trusted advisor.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and actually I forgot to mention the theme that I was alluding to is strategic. So my strategic allows me to see who some of those relationships are. But even in those cases, I really like your point about trusted advisor, because even though I may not feel the level of comfort of going deep with those connections, it's still, I think it's my authenticity that allows them to still feel comfortable coming to me to ask advice, and to better understand how they should move forward with a decision. I think my relator also, the authenticity is that I'll give them my real opinion, even if it doesn't advance the work that I'm doing, that it's just the right thing for them to do. And so I think that builds on that authenticity as well, and that's probably coming from responsibility, belief.
There's this trusted advisor formula that Meister from Harvard, I think, came up with, and it talks about credibility and reliability. The third one is intimacy.
Yep.
I think it's the willingness to get close to people. I think to some degree that's one of the characteristics that I see of, doesn't mean they want to get close to everybody, but I think relators have a comfort with intimacy. In the very there's an ability to get close and be comfortable in that kind of joining someone's world.
Yeah, and
I've seen you do that with clients. I've seen you kind of do that. So
I think that's right on, and also what's interesting is the bottom part of that formula is self-orientation.
Yeah.
And the lower that the number is, the more intimate, reliable, and credible you can be. And I think that's part of where the relator comes in. Is my self-orientation tends to be very low, in that I really am in there because I want to do what's right for them. And I think that's what the clients, sense in the work setting. And plus, I think a lot of it too is it goes back to your informal, Curt. That I can have a lot of fun with my clients. I mean,
that's what I've noticed about you is you've got, and I think that's part of your informality. You're fun to be around, and you set people at ease with that kind of informality, and I can see how that works both with professional people that you work with, but also obviously works with the friends and family members that you have as well.
Yeah, definitely changes the energy.
Jim, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we got a bunch of questions coming in. So Logan and Tyler ask a similar question, and they ask, does woo sharpen relator or vice versa? And then Tyler's kind of follow-up on that is, what does sharpen relator and what tempers it? So some similar ideas there. Yeah,
that's kind of a thing I've been talking about, Brian, about how some themes sharpen a theme, some themes temper. And I was thinking about that. I think the themes that kind of sharpen relator are the ones that would make it go deeper and more selective. So I think I've noticed a lot of times when people have relator and they have deliberative, I think they become even more selective. They become even more careful. They become even slower. I think sometimes another theme that might kind of sharpen relator would be a theme like intellection. When people kind of think deeply as well as kind of want to have social depth, I think those two together kind of, I think they play off each other and add to that depth. I think woo would be a theme that would be more of a complementary theme, and again, not too many people have that. It's more typical to have one or the other, but I think woo certainly could do that. It would kind of help with the courtship and the marriage.
Yeah, I think Curt, I think that you're right on about. I think I also like learner input. Anything that gets me more curious, would sharpen it. I think belief, like we said earlier, is one that really is one that when I find that common set of values with you, it really creates a strong connection.
It makes you more selective. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think woo is kind of like you said earlier, is like achiever. It's a door opener.
Yeah.
So it gives me, I think what I've noticed is with people with woo and relator, they tend to even have more and more broad but deep kinds of connections.
Yeah, they probably have lots of these clusters. I mean, and they might do that quicker in a lifetime. Yeah. I mean, if they just know lots of groups that they're affiliated with. That's a great question.
Rhonda asked this question, is there any overlap between relator and introversion? She's using that from the Myers-Briggs.
Mm-hmm.
I would say relators are often kind of more introverted. They get energy from a fewer people, not a lot of people. But I don't think they're pure introverts. I think they want to be around the people they know. They're not necessarily people who are just want to be off by themselves without any. So I don't know if it's pure introversion, but I think they are more introverted than people who like to have regular and contact with everybody. How would you respond to that, Brian?
Yeah, I would say as far as Myers-Briggs goes, I was an I as far as that goes, and it's interesting because I think what the StrengthsFinder does for you when you're comparing it to the Myers-Briggs is it gives you a little more detail. So when people would see me, doing a huge speech or being in front of a room, they would say, how could that person be introverted? And I think that whole conversation about the one-on-one, how slow you go to build relationships, how comfortable you are in a room full of strangers without having a reason for being there, those all begin to tell you more about why and to what degree. To your point, Curt. So I think that's there's some interesting connections there.
Yeah.
Mary Sue asks, best advice in general for relators in circumstances where they need to take some initiative. Brian, you kind of alluded to that maybe a little bit with your public speaking.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in on that one just real quick.
Yeah.
And that is, what I find is that if I know I'm going to be going into a social situation, one of the things is use your complementary partners, and that is if you do go into a room where there are 50 people you don't know and 2 people you do, use the 2 that you do as a springboard. I do that all the time, where I'll walk up to the person I know and say, hey, is there anybody here I should know? And they open the door for you. The other thing is just having good questions. People love to talk about themselves, so being able to ask them, why are you at this particular event? What brought you here? What's your interest for being here? Whatever the context might be, but just having some good door openers. Once I find, like Curt said, you're a little uncomfortable in that initial situation, once you get about 2 or 3 questions in, things begin to get more comfortable because your relator starts to engage, if you will.
Yeah, I like it. The construct you talked about, how achiever kind of gets the relator going, and I think for me it's my learner. My learner gets my relator going. When I kind of use my curiosity to open the door, I become a student of people I don't know, and it's almost using learner in almost a social way, becoming a studying people, kind of break the ice. So yeah, I think that would be a great way to kind of do that.
Tyler asked this question, does having focus and relator together make someone a superhuman with relationships?
Yes. I think it probably just adds to the selectivity to some degree. I think I have focus and relator, and I think I have like focus and maximizer and relator, and I think all 3 of those things more of kind of almost closing. It's narrowing kind of the focus, and so I think my relator may even be a bit narrower and a bit more selective because of that focus. I mean,
yeah,
but I think you could use focus to kind of set social goals. How many people would I like to know?
I think it also it makes you comfortable with long-term relationships. So my focus allows me to stay on track, knowing that, okay, I might not get this today, but I know that the longer the amount of time I stay on goal, on target with this client, the deeper we're going to go. The more goals we hit together, the deeper we're going to go. So I think there's just kind of that, it keeps you on course, if you will.
Connie asked a great question. Do relators get frustrated if people they work with don't want to make the same connections?
I don't know if I felt that way. So I can only speak from my perspective. I don't know if I've ever wanted to be a friend with somebody and I didn't feel like they didn't want to be a friend with me, because I don't feel that way very often. I'm a bit more selective.
Yeah, that's really a good question. I think it also depends on what else is around it. So, I'm not a very high empathy person. I'm not a very high harmony person. So when I think if I'm in a situation where I feel like someone doesn't want to connect, then I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to say I'm not going to spend my time, and that's probably maximizer, Curt, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm going to say I'm not going to try to make something here that isn't here. Maybe it's kind of tongue in cheek. Maybe it's it's their loss. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it too. But I just don't invest there anymore.
It could be low includer too. I have that kind of profile, high relator, low includer. I'm not always aware of exclusion, either my own or someone else's, to tell you the truth. And so, but I can see how it could be frustrating for someone who really wants to make a connection and you don't reciprocate, or you don't have the time. So I certainly understand that frustration.
Curt, Olaf asked that exact question. He just said, what's the main difference between relator and includer?
I think relators are people who kind of let the people in they know. They let people in they know, whereas includers are people who notice people who are kind of been left out. So I think includer is really a social awareness of what's outside of you, and I think whereas relators are really people who let other people. They're selective about who they get close to, where there is a more inclusiveness in includers. They really are trying to kind of bring lots of people close, not lots, everybody, getting everybody.
Okay. Logan asked this question, does someone lacking relationship themes relate better? This kind of goes back to the question we had a second ago, but does someone lacking relationship themes relate better to relators? Or another way of putting it, how can strong influencer strengths help relators?
Well, I think influencing themes can, substitute to some degree if you have low relationships. I think a theme like significance, which is an individual theme, it's a theme where people who have it are aware of perceptions. And I think what that means, it means that people with significance care what other people think about them. And I think that can have a positive effect on relationships sometimes. If I am interested in how you feel about me, I care about how you feel about me, I'm probably going to treat you in a way that you're going to be perceive me in a more positive way. I mean, that's just one example of a relationship thing, of an influencing thing. I think actually in our domain, I think woo is kind of an influencing theme in the domains. And so that is a theme that has kind of, I think it kind of feels like it could fit in the relationship building theme to some degree, relationship building domain, but it certainly brings some social ability to people.
Yeah, and I think that if you think about the relationship between the influencing themes and relator, I think that oftentimes the influencing themes allow, if I have a complementary partnership with someone who really brings some of those influencing themes, if I'm a leader, and I'm talking about like a leadership team, then I really encourage those teams to really lean on the folks with influencing to get the message out there faster. I also talk about how relator, you're going to be out there influencing one person at a time or small groups at a time and in a very genuine way. But you might need to lean on some of the influencing talents around you to get the message out there faster and more broadly.
Yeah, I like that. That's great.
I do find with me, woo is number 2 and relator is number 8, and my woo definitely dominates the relator all the time. And so I enjoy the deep relationships. I like having significant conversations with people, but that's not my focus, right? I would rather get to know more people than less. But put in the context of a deep relationship, I never shy away from that conversation. So I was just thinking yesterday, we have coaches in town doing some of our training, and I grabbed one of them and we sat down one-on-one, and the conversation got very deep, very, very fast, and I don't fear that. I just don't lean that way most of the times, right? I'd rather be in big social groups doing those kinds of things. So that's kind of how that works for me.
That's good. Well, the good news is that you're versatile. You've got a choice. You can do either or, and not many people have that kind of versatility. So, congratulations.
Well, if I could just remember people's names sometimes. Even after I've had long conversations, they'll be like, "Well, who are you talking to?" Somebody. So, well, Curt, that we are kind of coming up for a landing on this. I will throw it back to you. Those are the questions we have from chat.
Okay, terrific.
As we wrap it up here.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank Brian for coming on and for talking about Relator. I just think you've given a whole new breadth and credibility to this theme by the way you've kind of used it in your life and in your work. And so thank you so much for sharing with us in that way. And I just think it's a theme that I think is underestimated sometimes, and so I hope that we've kind of helped to kind of raise the understanding of this theme so that the people who have it are more comfortable in using it both in their personal life and their professional life.
Brian, it's great having you on. I'll remind everyone that they can take full advantage of all the resources we have available around strengths at the Gallup Strengths Center, gallupstrengthscenter.com. You know, even during the program, we had some individuals ask me the question, how can I get information on, on these themes? And actually, if you just Google Gallup and the theme, there's tons of information out there. You can do it on Bing as well. That you don't have to be exclusive to Google, but go to any search engine. Type in the theme in Gallup, and we have a couple different places where we have all kinds of information about each of those themes, as well as our Facebook group around Call to Coach. You can join us there if you want to put questions in, and as well as our YouTube page. We have little strengths vignettes that are about 2 minutes long. Those are great that if you're just kind of thinking, oh, what does this mean? You can click on the video, and in 2 minutes or less, you can have kind of a very good description of what that theme means, and those are very helpful. And, of course, all those resources are available as well at coaching.gallup.com, and you can also catch the recorded audio and video of this show as well as the past ones. We have about, I think, our fifth one here, Curt. I think this is number 5 that we've done, and we'll get through all 34 as we work through this. Those are available out at coaching.gallup.com. Join our Facebook group. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We've got meetup events going on around the country, so we might have one coming to a city near you. Again, you can keep track of us for that. And then keep track of all the future webcasts that we do. We do 3 of them now, Call the Coach, Theme Thursday, the one you're at today, and a brand new one we just started about 4 weeks ago called The Great Manager. So if you're interested in digging in, and Brian, you're actually going to get involved a little bit in that here in the future. So we should get you on there and see you again when we talk about The Great Manager. For Curt and for Brian, we'll say thanks for coming out today, this evening, or this morning, depending on what time zone you're in. We know we're international, and we thank you for coming out. If you came late, that's okay. As soon as we're done here, you can just hit refresh, and it will go back into replay mode, and you can join it again. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and Curt, I'm trying to think of, do you know what we have lined up?
I think it's Woo. We're doing Woo,
very nice.
Kind of the contrast to Relator. We thought that might be good, so we'll be talking about Woo.
Very good. We are on Woo. We'll say goodbye, everybody.